right, guys, welcome to the Home Service Summit webinar series, where all this content and information is about home service franchising. I couldn't be more excited to have Nick and Omar on today from College Hunks Hauling Junk and Trash Butler. And my name's Scott Abbott, the host of the show and CEO of 5-Star Franchising, and one of the founders here. Also involved with ProNexis, obviously, which is a sales support center and customer experience solution. Our mission at ProNexis is to transform the customer experience in the home services industry through voice, chat, text, and instant booking. If you've been on here before, you know the format. I'll have the pleasure of having a great conversation with Nick and Omar for the next 45 minutes. At any point in time, feel free to, in the chat, throw in any questions you've got for Nick, Omar, or myself, and I'll make sure that at the last 15 minutes, I get to those questions and we answer them for you. So let me just go ahead and just talk a little bit about their backgrounds before we let them dive into some of the good stuff. Nick and Omar have been around as TV personalities, authors. They have over 200 franchisees at College Hunks Hauling Junk, doing about $280 million in annual sales. We're talking backstage, and I know they launched it with junk hauling, but they have included moving as part of that in their concept now. Almost 4,000 people are employed by their business nationwide. They've been named to Top 30 America, Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur of the Year. I mean, they're on TV. We're just blessed to have both these guys on this show with us. And I've known both Nick and Omar for, I don't know how long it's been, but we connected, I think, the very first time in Park City, I believe, on the slopes, doing some skiing and snowboarding. And from the moment you meet them, you know they're impressive and you know they're going places. It was quite obvious. And I've been kind of tracking their success from a slight distance over the years, and they've done amazing things. So with that, I thought, let's just kick it off, guys, with a little bit of the story. What got you going? And also, if you don't mind, talk about your friendship and how that came together in the business you guys started.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us. Obviously, it's exciting times in business, and it's exciting times for our brand. Omar and I went to high school together, and we like to say we met in detention, and then we went off to different colleges. He went to University of Miami. I went to a small school in California called Pomona College. And the summer before our senior year, we were home for a summer break, and Omar's mom approached us with this beat-up cargo van. And basically said to Omar, you guys could be like college hunks who haul junk. And we kind of laughed about it at first, and then put it on computer printout flyers, stuck it in mailboxes, recognized that people had a need for the service. They thought the name was catchy. Went back to school for our senior year. Omar ended up writing a business plan and putting it into an entrepreneurship competition. So that gave us a little more confidence in the idea, credibility to the concept. He ended up winning first prize. So, we graduated, got regular jobs briefly, and then started the business on a full scale. And of course, a lot of skeptics, people were like, you're going to quit your jobs to do what? Haul junk, and it's going to be called College Hunks. Are you sure about that? Are you going to throw away your degree to start a trash business? And, we always tell the story when we first started, we were doing all the work ourselves, of course, hauling the junk, answering the phone, driving the trucks. So we had this 800 number on the back of the truck routed to our cell phone. And anytime somebody would call to complain about erratic driving, I'd be in the driver's seat apologizing on the other end, saying, no, we don't condone that driving. I'll fire that guy when he gets back to the office. Probably fired ourselves 3 or 4 times. But we like to say it's been almost 20 years now. So we like to say we're almost a 20-year overnight success. It's been a long journey since those very humble beginnings. And connecting with podcasts like this and networking events, and the IFA and mentorship groups. Those have been very valuable to us in terms of sort of the stepping stones and putting the infrastructure in place for that 20-year journey.
Wow. I don't know if you guys know this, Nick and Omar, but cool backstory. 5-Star Painting was a business plan. During my master's, went to a competition, won first place. Our first investor came from that, who was a judge. That is like literally our story for me and Chad.
Wow, I didn't know that. And we actually had a fun, interesting story. Omar, I'll let you share the judge story, because it was kind of a butterfly effect for us as well.
Yeah, right. So the judge in the competition actually chased me out of the room and handed me his business card and said, "Hey, anything you want, I want to go into business with you," and actually walked back into the room he was judging in and looked at the score sheet, and he had actually scored me like a 6 out of 10 on one of the things, and scratched his head. He's like, "I just chased this kid out of the room and changed the score from a 6 to a 9, and the college HUNKS business plan ended up winning the competition by 1 point." So, had he not done that, had he not changed the score, I don't think we would have had the confidence to start the business. And we've kept in touch with him. He's been a mentor for us, and we actually recognized him at our franchise convention, I think 2 years ago. So it's definitely a butterfly effect. It was a pretty surreal moment for him to see all the people in attendance and all the lives that he changed with that score change.
Wow. I just love it. It's amazing when we look back on things, the serendipity of life and how some things come together. Lots to be thankful for. And it's it's interesting, just as you were saying that, how I think back to what the investor who fell in love with our business. We were at closing, and as we were at closing, he's like, "Wait, are we doing a painting company?" Like, he literally was like, "Wait a second." Like, and I think that speaks to what you just mentioned, and that is, it's people, right? What the judge saw wasn't a junk hauling business. What the judge saw was who you were, and he knew, I need to invest in that person, right? And that is ultimately what is going to drive the success of any business. Maybe, if you don't mind, so I'm just curious, did you give your mom any stock? I mean, she pretty much named your company. Yeah, she pretty much set you on your way.
I know. She should. We need like a statue of her or something at some point. But she's a proud mom. So emotional stock for sure. And very grateful.
Yeah, she's got to be so proud.
Our parents at another franchise reunion where we presented them with a thing in front of our franchise owners. So it's not unnoticed.
Yeah. You know what? As you're saying that, I want to get into culture here in a minute. But before I do, I got a question about Nick's dad. But we're going to come back to this because I think you just, as you talked about how you use your convention to give thanks to people in your life that had such an impact, you're creating these moments that are beautiful moments that you're sharing with your franchisees where you're helping create connection. And I want to dive back into that because I'm sure it's very intentional. I know you guys are you're very thankful people, but I'm also sure you're also thinking about the impact of these things and what it means to the organization. So before I do though, Omar's mom names the company College HUNKS Hauling Junks. Says you guys should be go hauling some junk. Nick's driving truck, taking the calls, and Nick, your dad's a doctor. What is? And I've met your dad. I was telling Omar this. He joined us skiing one time. That man can shred. He's a really cool guy, as Omar put it. He's an athlete, right? But really cool guy. What did your dad think of this, Nick, of you guys creating a junk hauling company?
Yes. So I think Omar's parents were a little bit more excited about the entrepreneurial and open to the entrepreneurial pathway. I had been brought up to maybe follow that more traditional career path where you work hard in school, you get good grades, you get into college, you get a degree, you get a corporate job, or you go into a professional field like law or medicine, which is obviously sort of the path my dad had taken. And so I think it was with the best intentions, because back in the early 2000s, entrepreneurship was really still considered, and it still is to this day, but it's maybe a little bit more mainstream today with shows like Shark Tank and The Profit, and it's things that have made it more common and worthwhile considering. But in the early 2000s, entrepreneurship was sort of seen as risky, and so my dad viewed that as well, that's risky, and he was one of those individuals that said, well, you just got a college degree. Are you sure you want to go, start this junk removal business with your buddy? Uh-huh. And he actually advised that I don't quit my day job right after college, that I sort of, wait it out a little bit, see how the business evolves. And so the way we actually worked it out with Omar is Omar worked on the trucks Monday through Friday while I was at my day job. Meanwhile, I still had this cell phone that the 800 number was routed to. So when I wasn't on the truck answering the phone, I was actually ducking into the janitor's closet to answer the phone to take an appointment for the next the next day or the
His
next.
coworkers thought he was a drug dealer, I think, because he was always.
Yeah, the coworkers were wondering why my phone kept ringing and why I kept stepping into the janitor's closet to answer it. But then about 2 months into it. Yeah. So then about 2 months. About Agent Friedman. There you go. About 2 months into it, the business started to get some legs and momentum under it, and I was working on the trucks on the weekends, but I told my dad, I've been working on this business all day long, all week long for the past 2 months, even though, I've physically been at my day job, my head's been in this business. And he saw how excited and energetic and passionate I was becoming about this creative entrepreneurial venture. And so he was like, I think it's probably time you go full steam into this, with your buddy Omar. So that's kind of how he looked at it. And he was a little bit more guarded and, but very supportive as well, and very proud, obviously, also.
Yeah, I imagine he's so proud today as well with what you've done, what you guys have done. I think it is also interesting you mentioned that, and I saw this as well. Entrepreneurship was kind of like you look down a little bit. There's a lot of these failure stories, guys that would go, raise some money and burn people's capital and bright ideas and nothing ever made it. But entrepreneurship has flourished in general, and people view entrepreneurs differently today thanks to those shows, as you mentioned. So why don't we talk about that? Because I think we could probably give thanks a little bit to the guys like at Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, these other television shows that started to celebrate people who had ideas and were willing to take risks and put capital to work and make something happen. You wrote a business plan, a great idea, and that being said, all across in North America, there's been business plan competitions encouraging entrepreneurship, right, at the school level, which has been fantastic. But how did you kind of go from business plan at a college and having some mentors help you build this thing to going to national television and getting in front of some of the most respected business people in the world, pitching hauling junk? What happened between business plan and national television?
So we actually had already started franchising. We had about 10 franchises at the time. And one of our team members, who was our director of franchise support, kind of busted into our office one day and was like, hey, look at the back of this magazine. I think it was H.U.N.K.S magazine. Back page, there was a little blurb saying entrepreneurs wanted for a new TV show. And this was before Shark Tank had ever been aired, right? So it was, no one knew what the show was. And Nick and I were like, well, let's pitch something. When we got into it, it was back then Shark Tank took a little cut on the business. So we didn't want to pitch the business that was necessarily operational and maybe get a little bit of a haircut on the equity. So we decided to pitch a sister concept called College Foxes Packing Boxes.
Yes, I remember this. Yeah.
So this was season 1, episode 1. We had 10 franchises at the time. Nick and I flew out to LA, and there we were kind of standing in front of, felt like 20 cameras in front of the Sharks. And it was, it was a boxing match. They immediately zeroed in on wanting to invest in College Hunks and lowballed the offer. Nick told Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary to stop talking. Everyone in the sound booth was like, "Oh!" I mean, it was awesome. It was intense. It was awesome. Kind of what you see was what you get with that show. They just edited it down a little bit for time. But I think what it did is it put us in the national conversation for the first time. It was, premiered on, I think it was ABC, ABC premiere show. We're talking about College Hunks on national TV, and it just put us on the map. And so it still reruns, and we still get franchise leads, and we can tell when that show is on because our website traffic boosts up. And so it was one of those game-changing, transformational opportunities and experiences for us.
Yeah, and I'll say, one of the things that was interesting about that experience is this was before anybody knew who the Sharks were. They weren't television celebrities yet. And so, I didn't know Mr. Wonderful, it was his shtick to sort of beat people up and be kind of a jerk for television. So I just thought he was being a jerk. And so when he declared himself out, I was kind of like, okay, well, thank you. That means you get to stop talking so we can hear from the other sharks is what I meant. But it didn't come out that way. So, you had asked about the evolution. In the early days, we were doing all the work ourselves. And one of our mentors recommended to us the book E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. I'm sure that's been influential for you, Scott. It probably should be a must read for anybody with a small business, especially with a home service business, because it's a very simple message in that book, which is learning how to work on the business, not just in the business, and creating systems and processes so that the business can grow without you being the one pulling all the levers or steering the wheel, answering the phone, moving the furniture in our case. And that was the light bulb moment for us, was if we're ever going to have another truck, let alone another location, we've got to start documenting how we do everything. And we still teach our franchise owners to this day the importance of working on the business, not just in it, and understanding that they're investing in a franchise model, which is a system and it's a platform that has a sort of a proven method for being successful. And so I think that kind of helped guide us to the growth trajectory we were on. And then, as Omar mentioned, the Shark Tank experience was kind of our big break from a national publicity standpoint. And we've always been pretty intentional about what I'll call the sizzle and the steak. The sizzle is kind of our branding. It's our name, it's our colors, it's our TV appearances, it's our bright, colorful trucks. The steak is the systems, the processes, the customer experience, the culture, the client experience, the team member experience. And so we've been very intentional about both of those elements, how to stand out, but also how to make an actual positive experience when somebody actually engages with our company.
I love it. Maybe let's just talk about the PR side for a little while, because I know we all know that you guys are really good at this. If you could just kind of speak to, was it always your strategy? Like when you started College Hunks Hauling Junk and you got into business, you responded to the ad in the back of an Inc. magazine that got you on TV, right? Was it always opportunistic? Like if there's ever an opportunity to get our story out there, you guys just know we're always going to go after it. And that was part of your strategy? Or was it like, tell me about what made you decide that PR was a way to grow the business?
So about 3 months into the business, a reporter from the Washington Post saw one of our little bandit signs, little yard signs at one of the off ramps or something, and thought it was a funny name. And she was a writer that wrote about kind of new businesses and creative human interest stories. So this was in 2005. So this was pre-social media, people just scrolling Instagram mindlessly. People actually sat and read the newspaper. And so she came out and did a whole article about this business that started as a business plan in college and had gone on and now was launching in the local market where we had grown up. And we got a ton of interest from employees, from customers, from people who read that article. So that was kind of when we first, I think, became aware of the power of publicity from a credibility standpoint, from a brand awareness standpoint, and possibly from a consumer demand standpoint. So because of that experience, we have always had our antennas up for opportunities like Shark Tank. More recently, we were on Undercover Boss, and I can tell you that didn't just fall in our lap. That was a sort of a masterclass of persistence. We reached out to them probably in 2012 or 13 to express interest in the show. At the time, we were too small. They had never done two founders on the show. Then the show went through various iterations. It got canceled. It came back. They did Celebrity Undercover Boss. It came back. And about every once a quarter, twice a year, I would reach out to the producer and sort of ping them and say, hey, we're still interested in doing Undercover Boss. Keep us posted if there might be an opportunity. And, that opportunity came almost 10 years later. Wow. We've always been, I think, open and opportunistic, but also proactive, looking for ways to, I don't want to say shamelessly self-promote, but get the brand out there and into the public eye.
So, Omar, are you involved in the PR front? The whole company is like, you got your side hustle working on different contacts, and then Nick's doing his, and plus you've got a marketing person, or like, who's doing all of the, like, this outreach and this persistent effort to get the brand out there?
Yeah, I mean, so, we certainly worked with PR companies and they sort of do the ongoing stuff that you might see out there with press releases. But I think, as visionaries and, for what Nick and I do in terms of our role, I think it's very much geared towards that brand awareness and getting the story out there. So I think we both tend to wear the PR hat in the company, and we're always looking for ways to promote the brand, whether it's, through stuff like the television stuff that Nick mentioned or other avenues as well.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Omar had a phenomenal idea a little over a year ago to be the first company to sponsor a college athlete when this name, image, and likeness law was coming into effect from the NCAA for college athletes. And so Omar, having gone to University of Miami, calls me up. He's driving down to University of Miami from Tampa to arrive and meet with the quarterback of University of Miami to do a signing at midnight the moment the law went into effect. And they had this, photo up on social media, and they were going to send it out to these ESPN reporters. And because it was so timely and relevant in the news cycle, our name and that photo and that signing has been sort of reshared and re-talked about in mainstream media, ESPN, Sports Illustrated. And so like, that's a very out of the box example. But I think, we're wired as somewhat creative, but always been very attentive to the PR. And, there's you're familiar with Cameron Harold, Scott. He's written a whole chapter and does a whole speech about how they've had so much success, getting publicity when he was with Got Junk, which is one of our counterparts in the junk removal space. And it's really thinking about the fact that every reporter or journalist or TV show needs a story to tell. And so the point is, be a helper by reaching out to those journalists, reporters, or TV shows that are looking for something to talk about, and give them some bullet points, give them some angles, and see if they stick. And so we've kind of taken that similar approach, and it's been effective.
Yeah, their job is to create content that engages their readers, and you're there to help. Maybe break this down for us, if you don't mind. If you were to say how many hours a week you spend on creating the pitch or pursuing opportunities that are PR related as visionaries, just the two of you, how much time every week do you spend on that aspect of your business?
It's probably not something that we could just quantify with how much time we spend per week. I think it's something that's like in our minds all the time. And then it's just a matter of timing it when something is relevant and ready, whether it's that NIL stuff that Nick talked about, or, in the middle of COVID, donating our trucks for domestic violence victims. I mean, it's trying to do things that are A, right, and then B, that help reporters write the story and are relevant. Because like Nick mentioned, every single morning, reporters all over the country wake up and scratch their heads and ask themselves, what am I going to write about today? And so if you can spoon feed them stuff that is relevant and timely and makes sense, you can get certainly a lot of awareness and a lot of PR hits with that. So it's not something that's like, 20 hours a week, Nick and I are crunching away at PR. I think it's more so just having the antennas up all the time and just looking for those angles.
Yeah. And I think we sort of feel it's worked out where we've had like one major publicity story, at least once a year, one major story a year or every 2 years or something like that. We've just kind of gotten lucky in that respect. But there's also
luck favors the bold. So
that is true. That is true. But PR is one of those things where it's like, if we spent all of our time doing that, it would be very neglectful to, I would say, the stake of the business. Because I would put publicity in the sizzle camp. It's a very valuable feather for the brand. It helps create credibility, awareness. Like, it's very invaluable, hard to measure the actual impact of it. But if we were spending all of our time doing that, we'd be neglecting the core systems, the employee experience, the customer experience. And so I think we probably spend more of our time focusing on, the stake of it while still having our antennas up. And
Sure.
if a thought crosses our mind, we start fleshing it out, and then we start, pursuing the sizzle.
So, I mean, it's part of your culture, right? And it's part of who you guys are. It's in your DNA. That's definitely how you approach the business. If you're pitching 10 reporters, or sending you mentioned, Nick, how persistent you had to be to finally get on the TV show, right? Over 10 years, you're pinging him every couple of years, reminding him of that opportunity. If you send out 10 storylines or something like that, what percentage of those get picked up? Like 1 out of 10? Is it 2 out of 10? Are you striking out?
I would say you're striking out more than you're getting the hits. I mean, because as you all know, in franchising, I mean, there's the press releases of the new franchise opening up in X city, and is that going to get picked up by the Washington Post? No, but it might get picked up by the local paper. Is it a PR grand slam? No, and you're sending those kind of like ongoing press releases out that get a little bit. But in terms of like the grand slam or home runs, you're probably 1 out of 100, right? It's just you're and to Nick's point, it's not something that you're just infatuated with, but it's something that when it happens, you kind of have to jump. But you're definitely striking out more than you're hitting, certainly for the big PR. And then you've got your
that's what I'm looking for. I think. Thank you, Omar, because I think that had to be said, because there's people here listening thinking, man, these guys just are always getting the opportunities, but you're putting the work in. You're willing to ask 100 times to get that home run. And I think that's a reminder to all of us that, like, if you want opportunity, fortune does favor the bold. You have to be willing to ask for the opportunities and being relentless in your pursuit of it. And like you mentioned, Nick, it took 10 years, right, to get on that show. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you've ever seen the movie The Founder about Ray Kroc in McDonald's, he ends with that famous speech about persistence. And I think persistence is so critical with every aspect of being a business owner, patience and persistence, because, things always tend to take longer than we as entrepreneurs, optimistically believe they should take. And things are going to be harder than we as entrepreneurs optimistically believe they're going to be. And so having that patience and persistence to just keep pushing forward, keep following up. And that goes for following up with reporters and PR opportunities. That goes with following up with prospective clients. It goes with following up with, prospective mentors or advisors. It's just, persistence is, I think, an X factor for any business owner that wants to withstand the ebbs and flows of the market conditions and time.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Great message. Maybe if you wouldn't mind, just to help people get a sense of how impactful your approach to the business, which is unique. There's only a handful of companies out there that are as good at PR as you are. You've sold 200. You have 200 franchisees today in College Hunks, Holland Junk. What would you say? What percentage of the franchise sales you have every year come from referrals and PR related activities over the years?
I can't give an exact number, but what I can tell you is a very big amount in terms of, every time Shark Tank reruns or when Undercover Boss comes out, certainly we see the franchise leads increase. But, again, I couldn't necessarily quantify the exact number. I'm sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I were to put a number, I would say maybe 1 or 2 a year directly from the PR, but I would say 100% of them are influenced by the credibility of the PR. So if a lead comes in, maybe they haven't heard of College Hunks before, they didn't see us on Shark Tank or Undercover Boss, but then as they're doing their research, because they were referred by a broker or a friend, as they're doing their research, they see, these guys were on Shark Tank, these guys were on Undercover Boss. So the credibility that it creates in recognizing that we are a national brand, I think that has been very influential in attracting franchise candidates. And that works also with the broker networks as well. There's franchise brokers or consultants who help show opportunities to their clients. And if the consultants or brokers have seen some of our PR or know that we're, have been in the spotlight, that's something that they can talk about to build up our opportunity as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think there's, we're not great on PR, but there's no question that we get in the news once in a while for little awards and so forth, and leveraging that content in the sales process and cycle is critical. And so I think you hit it right. Whether or not it is directly attributed to that person finding you from the TV show, you get a couple sales a year. So clearly it works. It's valuable, right? But the impact it has on the process is massive. So maybe let's jump from this to culture, because culture is a very kind of ethereal thing. Like it's I feel like everyone says it, like culture is really important, but it's really hard to articulate sometimes and describe. It's almost like magical. And yet I'm pretty sure you guys have that magic going on. So I'd love for you to just speak to like, how have you thought about your business culture, and have you been strategic, or have you let it just kind of flow from who you are and it has just formed because it's who you guys are?
I would say it's very intentional. And I can remember early on in our business, we were sort of, first getting our feet wet with hiring employees and having some challenges and difficulties with it. And I don't know if Omar had this idea himself, or if he read it in a book. I can't quite recall. But Omar said, the challenge is right now, we don't have any culture in our business. And he said, a business without a culture is like a picture frame without a picture inside of it. And it's very fitting, because you got beautiful photos behind you, Scott, of your family, as opposed to, just a blank frame. And so when Omar said that, I was like, man, you're kind of right. There's no sort of image of what the inside of our company looks like, feels like, or acts like. And so then around that same time, as you guys can probably tell from this, we became avid readers when we started the business. We read Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Awesome book.
All he talks about is the difference between a good company and a great company, is that a good company might have a set of core values, but a great company uses those core values to decide who we're bringing on to the bus, who we're putting in our frame, who we're going to put in the picture in our business story, in our business journey. And so we got to work on developing our 4 core values as a brand. And then we become very diligent about using those values as a litmus test for who we bring into the organization, who we reward and recognize, who we ask to move on to a different career path because they don't quite align with our core values. And, you're right. It is sort of cliche to some degree to talk about, but we've been intentional about it. And we believe that living the values is what creates the culture, and culture drives behavior. Behavior drives results in the business. And so it's this sort of cycle effect where, we've set the parameters of the behaviors that we value. That creates the culture in the organization. That drives the behavior that ultimately drives the results in the business. And it's been very effective. It's been very effective. I mean, there's obviously tons of studies out there that are, talk about values-based and culture-based organizations outperform those that aren't. And then I think the one mistake we made along that way was we didn't incorporate performance-based results in conjunction with the core values, because the soft and warm and fuzzy culture, it doesn't work if there's not accountability to the results and to the metrics and to the performance that's required. And we like to say, no, if there's no margin, there's no mission. So if we can't create a profitable enterprise, then all that warm and fuzzy stuff doesn't matter. And so that's been sort of the evolution of the culture piece, and it's been very powerful, very powerful.
Do you guys use, Traction has a tool where you actually rank order your team members on the values you have in an organization? Do you guys use that annually, quarterly? How do you guys leverage that in your system?
It's annual. It's part of the employee or team member performance reviews. We look at the core values. One of the things we say is another sort of mantra of ours is it's not what's on the walls, it's what's in the halls. Meaning it's not like the core value statements on a poster on the wall. It's who we're actually aligning ourselves with. And so if there's behaviors that are unproductive or counterproductive to the core values, we try to not wait till the employee review to discuss that. We try to proactively address it directly with the individual, and point out a specific, examples that are sort of against the grain of the values. And obviously, if somebody's not able to sort of fall in line with the way the values are laid out, then it may not be a fit for the brand.
I'm just taking notes from what you're saying here, Nick, because I'm getting some real good reminders, right? And we all need these things on how to run a business well, right? Maybe, Omar, would you mind just like share with us, I think it's HUNK stands for something. Is that what it is?
Yep. So
Omar,
HUNK stands for
what are the values?
So the HUNK stands for honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable service. Our company purpose is to move the world. And then our core values are building leaders, always branding, listen, fulfill, and delight, and fun team environment. So all of those, sort of filter up to what Nick mentioned is the behaviors. But that move the world, is really what drives the PR. It's what drives the behaviors of our franchise owners, of our team members. An example of that would be one of our team members was stuck in an elevator with an elderly woman, and she couldn't stand for long periods of time. So he actually got on his hands and knees, and she sat on his back for like 20 minutes until the fire department came. And when the door was pried open, someone snapped a photo and it got posted somewhere on social media, and that picture went globally viral. And we always say there's nowhere in our manual that says when you're stuck in an elevator with an elderly woman, drop down and become a human chair. But that's what the core values and the company purpose do, right? They keep it at the forefront. So it could be as simple as our truck pulling over to help someone change a tire, to that story I mentioned of the guy in the elevator, to the PR that we've been talking about here as well. It just all sort of drives the behavior of our team members and franchise owners.
I think you nailed something, and you gave it a perfect example, Omar, of exactly how you need to lead, right? You just did it right there. There was a value you shared, and you gave us all an example of how someone lived it. And then you celebrated that person for living that. And so you're building culture by doing that, right? And so I think that was beautiful. And it's a reminder for everyone that's listening that, it's one thing to understand who you are and then what you want your business to look like, and then to articulate it all. But if you're not finding ways to reinforce that within the organization, talking about with your team members, making it part of the conversation, citing examples, rewarding the behavior, then the culture doesn't stick. And you've just done a great example of how you make that happen. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Omar, for doing that.
I was just going to add to what Omar said. Sorry, that we actually reinforce the values every day during our daily huddles. So we actually do a core value story or core value review every day at the corporate office, as well as at the franchisee level, to review a different core value each day, and then that gets it down to the frontline team members. So the goal EOS talks about is for the core values to be shared by all, not just with all. And you do that, like you said, Scott, by reinforcing it with core value stories, rewards, recognitions. Not every core value behavior is going to move the world and go viral globally like the story Omar shared, but there are going to be, certain incidents where you put a smile on a customer's face, or, you helped out one of your team members. And the only other thing I'll mention for your listeners is none of this stuff happens overnight. That gets back to that patience and persistence piece. This is with constant repetition and reinforcement over time, that culture develops and flourishes. It's not something that, day one we can just, microwave and it's ready.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something that's important to bring up in this context, especially talking about culture, and that was meeting rhythms, right? You mentioned you have a daily huddle. How often you meet with your people is these moments where you can actually be intentional about how you build the business. So maybe just talk a little bit about that. Are you guys running those huddles? Do you have a team member that's in charge of running those huddles? Is that huddle a 10-minute meeting? How quick and dirty is it? What time do you do it? Are you dialing in if you're traveling? Like, how does it actually work in the real world?
Yeah, so at the corporate level, we do a morning huddle at 11:11 every morning. it used to be 100% in person, and obviously once COVID happened, it's a hybrid sort of Zoom and in person environment. And then every franchise owner is conducting their own morning huddle earlier in the morning, usually before they dispatch their moving crews, their moving and hauling crews. They'll do a morning huddle as well. And it's usually a 5 to 10 minute, high energy, quick huddle, quick touch base, where we share good news. We share a core value story. We review any numbers from the day before or metrics that are relevant to discuss, or not discuss, just to share. And then we talk about priorities for the upcoming week. And then we close with a cheer. And, sometimes we'll do different themes at the corporate level. They've got, once it started becoming remote, it was like, bring your cat to huddle day, or bring your spouse to huddle day, things of that nature. And a different person at the franchise level, a different person runs it every day. So it gives people an opportunity to step up in front of a group, practice and hone their public speaking skills, be the leader, the huddle leader of the day. And then we encourage that the franchise owners do that as well with some of their team members.
So you mentioned reviewing some KPIs in that daily huddle, in that short meeting. As you know, there's a scorecard that Traction really encourages everyone to use. The numbers you look at, we look at those weekly. Are you using that scorecard in your daily huddle as well, or is that just for your weekly meeting?
Yeah, usually what we do is we have kind of a scoreboard already up that has the numbers updated. In our case, it's calls, it's bookings, it's revenue, franchises and things of that nature, conversion percentage on sales. And then usually each day of the week in the franchisor side of things, we have a different department head, or what we call business area leader, give an update on their specific, a little bit deeper dive on their specific metrics for that week. So that's the way we've set it up.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome. We're getting close to the opportunity for anyone that has questions. Go ahead and in the chat section, feel free to load any questions that you want to ask of our wonderful speakers, and I'll make sure that I ask them for you. But I've got plenty of things. I could do this for hours, guys. I'm thoroughly personally enjoying this. It's great reminders of things that I need to be reminded of about in running my own company. I'd love for you to talk about, a big event happened for your business about a year and a half ago. You took on some private equity investment that, up until that point, it was pretty much Nick and Omar, and you guys were running the company, full control, running the business yourselves. And the accountability, while I'm sure you probably would like accountability and you have mentors and board advisors are helping you in that capacity, the dynamic changes a lot when someone cuts a large check and now wants to know how that business is doing. Talk to me about your decision to do that, and then what impact that has had on the culture, if any, in the organization.
So, we had been in business a little over 15 years, and I think we were at the point where we wanted to just make sure that we stabilize the foundation and position ourselves for continuous, we like to say, infinite long-term growth. And the only way we were going to do that is sort of create some stability and foundation from a financial capitalization standpoint, because everything we had done up to this point had been really just reinvesting the company's own profits. And Omar and I had never really taken any meaningful liquidity from the company. And so we knew we still wanted to maintain majority control of the business, because the business has a great, clear trajectory to become $1 billion brand, we think. But we also wanted to find what we call the right partner, somebody that's going to be value additive, but not detract from the culture or from the trajectory that we're on. And so we ran a process with an investment bank, and we kind of had our clear parameters that we had flushed out in our mind was, we want to be able to take some money out of the business. We want to be able to strengthen the balance sheet. We want to find a partner that's going to be patient, that's not going to be bugging us, about when we're, getting their money back. We want somebody that's going to be a good sounding board for some of the big strategic decisions we need to make in the company, like technology or, big hires or new initiatives or international expansion. And so that was the path that we took to run our transaction. And we've been very happy with it. We've been very happy. We haven't looked back. Obviously the business has grown tremendously. So our new partners are happy, or not as, inquisitive. I will say Omar and I probably, if we didn't have the leadership team in place that we already had in place, we would not have been equipped to answer all the questions and provide all the reports and metrics. I mean, we are true entrepreneurial visionary founders, but we had already had in place our brand president, Roman Cowan, our financial controller, Onyx. So we had folks that were able to provide the spreadsheets and the reports and the data analytics and all the things that the private equity group needed to see and wants to see on an ongoing basis. Because I think if we were the ones having to try to pull those reports together on a weekly or monthly basis, we'd be not very happy. And so for us, it was important that we had the leadership team in place before we went the route of the private equity transaction.
That's a great insight for those listeners who are thinking about bringing private equity in. You hit on something really important, right? These are people in finance. They live in spreadsheets and they live and breathe numbers, but they can also add a lot of value to the organization, right? Because they look at things a little bit differently than an entrepreneur or a visionary does. And I'd love to maybe, Omar, if you want to share from your perspective, like, has it changed your view of the business? Have they added value to College Hunks by having someone else taking a look at the business from a numbers perspective?
Yeah, I think it certainly legitimizes the business. It creates the framework for sort of that growth, like Nick mentioned, because you have the quantitative folks that are going through the spreadsheets and really reporting back sort of what is the health of the business and what is the opportunity and where can we double down and triple down. So having, the big brains, for lack of a better word, in the boardroom, reviewing the numbers, but then also having a pulse on franchising, on the home services business, because they are involved in that world, giving us the insight about, okay, this is where we think you should double and triple down and where we can put the rocket fuel. That's the benefit. At the end of the day, Nick and I are going to be able, and Roman and the team can figure out the day-to-day, but it's sort of that white space and that green field of where do we go and where do we invest and where do we need to shore up. And so that's been a big benefit. And then, in our case, we've been fortunate in that they have been very hands-off. You hear the horror stories of some of these companies that take on money, and then all of a sudden it's like they bought themselves a job, for lack of a better word. And it has not been like that whatsoever. So we've been very fortunate to have them on the team.
That's awesome. Do you want to mention who they are, your new partners?
Sure. Yeah, it's Susquehanna Capital. They're based in Pennsylvania. What's interesting about them is it's all essentially private money. So they haven't, you hear about PE folks that have, pension funds and teachers funds. This is essentially a private company that has a private equity arm. So they are patient money. They're hold kind of, they like to hold their investments. And also, interesting enough, they're one of the largest shareholders in TikTok. Their venture firm out of China was an early investor in TikTok, which is a crazy story as to how that came about. So we're their second best investment after TikTok.
Well, you mentioned something, Omar, that I think would be valuable here to talk about. We're seeing the markets react to what the feds are trying to do. There's inflation that's happening. I got to believe that's putting stresses on your business, right? Because your franchisees, I've found that franchisees are reluctant to increase price. We all are reluctant to increase our prices. We're in a competitive environment. We're trying to win business. There are other people they could choose. And so like whoever goes first, right? You don't want to be the first to raise your price because then your competitors are stealing some business from you. But I believe that a private equity firm, as you mentioned, they have a view of the world that comes from being in multiple investments. I believe Susquehanna is also a Mosquito Authority as another concept. I've known some people over there. That it would seem to me that they can bring some value to you in terms of perspective on that. I'd love to get your thoughts on the economy right now, and what is it having an impact on your business? Is inflation affecting you guys? Are you raising prices? Are you worried about what's happening? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
So yeah, that's let me start with, I guess, the pricing and then talk about the other stuff you mentioned there. But I think historically, home service businesses, we're in the moving and hauling business, but I think all home service businesses have been undervalued and underappreciated by the consumer. When you think about what we do, right? We're taking trucks, driving around. We got to pay all this insurance. We're showing up to people's homes. We're moving their valuable items. We're painting their houses. We're killing the mosquitoes, whatever it might be. It's an undervalued, or has been undervalued by the consumer. And I think that there's room to double or even triple our pricing when you think about what we're doing. And sort of the silver lining of what COVID did, I think, is it put that appreciation on the consumer level for what we do, right? It's like, you got to wait 6 weeks to get your pool cleaned. Well, maybe you should pay a little bit more and get it cleaned next week. And so the consumers are paying more for cars, they're paying more for services. And obviously you have to back it up with the service. That said, how much would someone be willing to pay for a perfect move, right? A perfect stress-free move. I make the argument that it's probably double or triple what our pricing is. So if you can back up the service with the price, then people will pay it.
Yeah.
So that's, I think on the pricing side, certainly the hiring is a challenge across all businesses right now. More reason to raise prices, right? If our team members are commanding higher hourly wages, well, the only way to do that is to raise the pricing. So I think one of our strengths as a company is being able to hire and train our team members and do that at a national level. But there's obviously these challenges. Another one for us is being able to actually get the trucks, right? Supply chain issues of being able to order the trucks. So all these things are affecting capacity, and capacity is tight. And when capacity is tight, you've got to, again, raise prices. So I think sometimes our company president may feel like Nick and I are singing a broken record when we keep saying raise the prices, but it really is. It's really a very important part.
Are you guys involved in that decision, or are you letting the franchisees decide what their rates are?
We provide recommendations as a franchisor. We provide pricing recommendations to the franchisee. We developed a tool for pricing and internal employment cost to evaluate. If you're going to raise wages to pay more, here's what you should be charging to keep your percentages in line. So we provide recommendations, but ultimately the franchisee is able to determine the pricing. And then I'll just mention to your point about the sort of the overall macro economy. I think we've been in this sort of rubber band bounce back coming out of COVID for home services. A lot of people are scrambling to get stuff done to their homes or upgrade or move. And our business is tied very closely to the real estate market. And I think we can probably expect with interest rates rising, there can be a deceleration of the frenzy that was happening with buying and selling of homes. And we may experience that deceleration as well. But the one thing we've always said is, look, the macro economy we can't control. The rules of engagement we can't control. Like they are what they are. And so, it's like playing a football game on the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. Everybody's playing on the same football field. We're all in the same game. And so we've just got to be proactive, resilient, persistent, as I keep mentioning, to navigate through turbulent times or volatile times, which we may experience that, some of the, financial prognosticators are talking about. But yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll add is just, based on what our private equity folks have been telling us, is that home service business is a very hot industry to be in. Everything that we've seen in COVID, coming out of COVID, being in home services is a very, very good industry. People put a premium on their homes and who they allow into their homes. And they don't want to, some folks might want the guy off Craigslist, but I think a majority of people want a reputable company that has good reviews, that is higher priced in the market. And so there's a reason why these PE companies are calling all the people on this call and hassling them to invest. It's because they know something that we might not know, that home services is a great industry to be in, and it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that, Omar. I've got a question here for you, or two questions from some of our audience members. First is, what size of territory, what did you say is the size of territory, population or household count when you sell a franchise?
I think right now we're at 300,000 to 400,000 people, population head count per zone. And then somebody could buy a larger or multiple zones if they want a larger contiguous territory.
So you go off of population, not households.
We do. Yeah. We do
Okay.
look at households over a certain household income. I forget what the latest threshold is, but when looking at it, we may add some additional population if there's not enough households over a certain household income.
Got it. Okay. That's helpful. And that's pretty common. I think we've tended to be household driven because most of our brands are all servicing the home, right? But I think population is also a good number to be using as well. Another question we have here is, how, if at all, has your approach to PR and the outlets you go after changed today versus 10 years ago?
Well, so that's obviously a great question, because when we first started getting PR, it was like the channels were newsprint, magazine, and television. And then now with social media, people are getting their information from Instagram, from TikTok, from YouTube, from anything and everything, anything, anywhere and everywhere. And so I don't think our approach has changed much. We've seen that mainstream PR is still relevant because anything mainstream is still going to get shared socially and online. Right. But we have also looked at tapping into some of the social media influencers or some of the social media outlets that maybe have micro audiences. So they may not be the big national television broadcast, but even the national television broadcast may not have the same impact today that it did 10 years ago. So things are sort of more in different buckets. And so I think our approach has been, let's look for opportunities to spread the word. And maybe we're not going to get that big grand slam, but let's get a bunch of little base hits. Maybe an influencer used us to move and they're going to post about it. Or maybe there's a relevant local story that, we can get some video content shared. And so that's kind of, I think, our approach for the PR side of things.
Awesome. Thanks. And one more question I have here from Phil Metra. Phil, thanks for joining us. How do you define a right fit franchisee?
So the core value fit has to be there, and we do. They
got to be a hunk.
Yeah, that's right. No, you got to be able to deliver on the honest, uniform, nice, knowledgeable service, and that qualifies as a hunk. But there's a couple ways to answer this, because as an early stage franchisor, there's a pressing need to be able to sell franchises, and we made that mistake. I think every franchisor has made the mistake of selling or awarding a franchise to somebody that probably isn't a right fit, because it's like, we have to keep the lights on. We need to get that franchise fee. We need to get that warm body in. And so having the discipline to say no, especially in the early days, is very tough. But a right fit franchisee is someone who aligns with the core values, has the capital available to be able to invest in the business and work through ramp up and support themselves while they're doing that, and not burn through the cash and or need to pay themselves during that time. And then, thirdly, so the first two I think are a little bit easier to determine through interviews and just through checking their balance sheet situation. The third one I think is a little bit more of an art form, because does this person have the grit, the resiliency, the ability to be persistent, the ability to see hiring frontline employees in a home service business as a blessing, not a burden? Are they going to throw their hands up and say this business sucks when somebody doesn't show up and they got to go, jump on the truck for the day? Or are they going to say, you know what, this is an opportunity. Let's train these young guys who are showing up late on how important it is to be here on time. So that's harder to cipher, is those little nuances. But I would say those are sort of the ideal fits. Yeah,
I love that. Grit is, I think, it's such an important element of business, and it can't be overstated how we want to see that in our candidates as well as in our team members. Guys, this has been such a pleasure. I can't wait to go boarding and skiing with you guys sometime soon. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to the listeners who have participated, and I look forward to connecting in person sometime soon.
Scott, let me just say thank you. You've always been a great mentor and supporter for us. And I remember in the early days when we were just trying to figure it out, having conversations on the chairlift where you were like, well, you could try this and do this. Have you ever thought of that? And, we did a lot of those things that you shared with us. So
call center got to call them 13 times before you get an appointment. I think we still talk about that. So
buy or die. If you're interested, you're going to be called a lot.
Speed to lead. You taught us about speed to lead and
all that. Yeah.
Well, hey guys, thanks so much for being here, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and more importantly, that it brings some value in building your home services business. If you'd like to access more of this amazing content, like and subscribe below. If you'd like to be part of our live recordings and get involved with the speakers and myself, click the subscribe to calendar button or the link in the description to get updates to future events.